So we're on Daf Lamed Beis, Amud Beis. Towards the bottom of the Amud, the first word in the line is Hashmashas. Omarava. Okay, so we're talking over here about a person that's putting his Eiruvin in a tree. And the Mishnah was mechalik between a person that puts his Eiruvin in the tree above 10 Tvachim and a person that puts his Eiruvin in the tree below 10 Tvachim, inside the Rosh Hashanah. Right? So, Zok the Gemara. Omarava. Lo yishanu ela bi'ilon ha'oimid chutz li'ibura shel ir. We're talking over here about a tree that's outside of ibura shel ir. Ibura shel ir means the extension of the city. You have a city that has a bunch of houses and walls around it, a wall around it, and then you have other houses that sort of are extensions to the city. Which houses are considered to be an extension of the city? We'll learn about this in Mitzvah Shem later in the Gemara. Any house that's within 70 amas and a bit to this city is part of the city. So that space, if you put your Eirov within Ibura Shel Ir, within that space that's an extension of the city, so the distinction that the Mishnah makes there between above 10 Tvachim, below 10 Tvachim doesn't apply. So again, let's read the words again inside. Lo yishanu ela bi'ilan ha'omed chutz li'ibura shel ir. If you put your Eirov outside of the city and outside even of the extension of the city, then there'll be a difference where you put the Eirov in the tree, above 10 Tvachim or below 10 Tvachim. Aval ilan ha'omed b'toich ibura shel ir. If you place your Eirov in the tree and it's in a tree that's within the limits of the city, afilu l'mayla ma'asara, even if you put your Eirov higher than 10 Tvachim, harei ze Eirov. It's a good Eirov. Now, why is it a good Eirov? We have a problem here. The Eirov is above 10 Tvachim, it's in a Rishus HaYachid. Where are you dwelling? You're below and you're in a Rishus HaRabim. So you can't bring the food from your Eirov to where you are below. So the Gemara says an interesting concept. The Masa Keman the Mal Yadomi. We consider the city to be as if it's filled with earth. Meaning that it's as if you are above 10 Tvachim together with your Eirov. Hagam B'Poil, you're below. You're there on the ground in a Rishus HaRabim, and your Eirov is above in the tree. But because it's surrounded by a wall, it's as if it's all filled with earth, and you're there above together with your Eirov. Because it's surrounded, so this is a kula that they said, benegeh to an Eirov, that the very fact that it's surrounded by a wall, it's as if you're there together with the Eirov. And it actually includes, not only when you're actually inside the wall, but it even includes the extensions of the city as well, that because it's part of a city, it's as if you're above together with your Eirov. So therefore over here, the difference between higher than 10 Tvachim, lower than 10 Tvachim doesn't apply. Frag the Gemara, if so, if you're creating this concept, as if, this concept of because below, you're in a city, so it's as if you're above and together with your Eirov. If so, why not we apply this even when you're outside of the city? If so, chutz li'ibura shel ir, even if a person is putting his Eirov in a tree and it's outside the limits of the city, nami, you could also say a similar point. Kivin d'amar Rava said, and we're going to learn this in the 2 blot from now, hanoisin Eiruvai, wherever you place your Eirov, Yeshloi arba amis. That space where your Eirov is as if it's surrounded with a wall around it for 4 amis. The context of what it speaks about over there is, in a case where a person placed his Eirov down, right at the end of the 2,000 amis, so he should be able to walk another 2,000 amis, and the Eirov rolled out of the 2,000 amis. So now it's out of your 2,000 amis, and you won't be able to use it for an Eirov. But if it rolled out of the 2,000 amis within 4 amis, of the 2,000 amas, so then we consider that area to be surrounded with a wall. Wherever you place your Eirov, it's as if it's surrounded with a wall. And those 4 amas, so therefore you could still access the Eirov.
An imaginary wall.
Again?
It's an imaginary wall.
Yeah. So again, Hanaisin Eiruvai Yeshloi Arba Amas. So Havila Rishus HaYachid, it's as if this area is a Rishus HaYachid. It's not an actual Rishus HaYachid, but it's as if it's a Rishus HaYachid. And if so, Rishus HaYachid, Oila Ad L'Rakia. Or Rishus HaYachid, we know, goes all the way up L'Rakia. So meaning the person is putting the Eirov in the tree above 10 Tvachim. He is below on the ground. But nevertheless, it's like he and his Eirov are in the same Rishus. Because it's as if there's a wall surrounding that area and it's all in one and the same Rishus. So even though in actuality, In this case, and in the case that we read before, he's not in the Rishus HaYachid. He's below in the Rishus HaRabim, and it's a Rishus HaRabim. The Erev is above in a tree, and it's a Rishus HaYachid. And before also, when the Gemara said this concept, this imaginary concept of Masa Command Mal Yadami, as if there's earth and as if you're above, you're not actually above, you're on the ground, and you're in a Rishus HaRabim. But nevertheless, these imaginary things that Chazal tell us, that we are makel and considerate, because you're surrounded by a wall, it's as if you're above. And over here, Rava tells us, wherever you put your Eruv, it's as if you have a wall around you. That should be enough, legabi, the halacha of Eruv, that you and the Eruv are considered to be in the same place, and it should qualify for the Eruv. That's the Gemara's question. So therefore, it shouldn't matter where you're putting your Eruv in the tree, even if it's not in a city. Why shouldn't the Eruv be good? And for the Gemara, Amar Rav Yitzchak bereider Rav Misharshi, so we're going to have to say that we're talking over here about a person that is going to establish his place where he's making his Eruv, where he's going to be for the Eruv by the trunk of the tree. And then you have a branch coming out of the tree. And the branch of the tree is going out of his Dal Damas. And he's placing the Eruv in the branch of the tree away Dal Damas from where he is. If the Eruv would be above him, within his Dal Damas, so then Rava said, you're surrounded by a wall of Dal Damas. So then it's wherever you are, it doesn't matter. It's as if you and the Eruv are on the same Rishus HaYachid. But he is by the trunk of the tree. The Eruv is on a branch that extends out 4 amas away from him. And that's where he puts his Eruv. And therefore, he and the Eruv are not on the same Rishus. The Niskavin, the Gemara adds to this again. So the branch is outside of his Dal Damas. The Niskavin lishbois be'ikroi. And he intends to dwell for his Eruv where? By the trunk of the tree, by the Ikr of the tree. And the Eruv is out of his Dal Damas. So we can't use this concept that Rava says that you and the Eruv are on the same Rishus. But there's something that the Gemara doesn't explain over here, that Rashi explains. So if that's the case, so then how could you ever use this Eruv? Not only if it's Lamaila higher than 10 Tvachim, you can't access this Eruv because it's not within your Dal Damas. Even if it's Lamata Masara Tvachim, how could you bring that Eruv from out of the Dal Damas to where you are? There's an Issa on Shabbos to carry Dal Damas but Rishus HaRabim. How are you going to get this Eruv to you? So in such a case, it should never be a good Eruv. So the answer Rashi says is, no, you could bring it to yourself. You could bring it from where it is, Pachais Medal Damas. You walk with it less than 4 amas at a time, so you could bring the Eruv to yourself. Especially, one second, especially we're talking over here about Bein Hashmoshes. And according to the Mishnah that we're learning, and the Gemara said the Mishnah goes according to Rebbe, Bein Hashmoshes, any Issa D'Rabbanan is allowed for the purpose of the Eruv. So the person can go Bein Hashmoshes onto the tree, even though usually you don't use the tree in Shabbos, he can go Bein Hashmoshes onto the tree. He can bring it Pachis Medal Damas to where he is, and he'll have the Eruv. But if it's L'mayla Ma'asara Tvachim, so then he's bringing it from above Asara Tvachim, which is a Rishus HaYachid, down into the ground, which is a Rishus HaRabim, so that's a Islam and Atayra. Islam and Atayra you can't do to bring the Eruv to yourself. That's the pshat in the Gemara here.
Isn't the placement of the Eruv that establishes the place?
Not Lavdafka. No. The place where the person decides he's going to dwell, that's the place where the Shvisa is, where he's going to be for the Eruv. And then he puts the...
Food, isn't that lot if you go there yourself and without food that you're kind of Shvisa there?
In that place, correct. So, but if the person, even if he didn't go there, if the person was Niskaven, Lishbois in a certain place, and then he ends up putting his food in an area that's not close enough to where he is, just like the case we were talking about before in the Mishnah B'chlal. The person placed the food in the Eruv on a very high up on the tree. He's not planning on being shavis high up on the tree. He's planning on being shavis down on the ground. Elamai, down on the ground, he doesn't find a safe place to leave his food. He finds a safe place for his food, but he's not going to be shavis in that place where he finds safety for his food.
That's not comparable.
Huh?
So therefore,
Okay.
every place the area, if it's high up, it's still down. It's still down.
I'm just pointing out that the shvisa of the person and the place where you put the food is not necessarily in the same place, and they're not necessarily connected to each other. You're being shavis in one place, and then you have to have food to establish your shvisa there. Your food could be in a different place, and that's what's happening over here. It could be as far as you want, as long as it's going to be accessible on Bein Hashmoshes to bring it to the place where you are. So over here, Rashi explains, as I said,
So
that if you put it,
so then you don't have to put any food, leave it down in your house, even though it's 2,000 amos away.
maybe theoretically, in a way that you can bring it. If it's in a way that you can bring it, then maybe and a chanami. Okay. Let's see the hemshech of the Gemara. The Gemara is going to discuss a similar shayla to what you're asking a little bit later. Okay, now the Gemara says, Umayla. This is a continuation of the answer of the Gemara. Umayla mata. When it says that you put it above 10 tvachim or below 10 tvachim, what does that mean? In other words, simply until here we were learning what's pshat in the Mishnah. What kind of branch are we talking about? We're not really talking about a branch. We're talking about a tree that goes up. And the tree, you can find a spot in the tree lower down. You can find a spot in the tree higher up. But now we're saying the tree doesn't go up. You're talking about a branch that extends out in the length. It extends outward. So now the question is, what's l'mayla lamata? It should have said, Rashi says, l'mayla lamata is not the right wording. It should have said a higher branch that goes out or a lower branch that goes out. That's what it should have said. Talking about two different branches, that gavoya or namach. It's not the same branch l'chayra. So the Gemara says, no, it is. Umayla mata, the had zakif. We're talking about one branch that comes out and it curves upward. And did he put the food on the lower part of the branch, or did he put it after the curve when it goes upward? Do they have pictures over here for today's Gemara? I didn't take a look.
But we don't say that the branch goes basai kar.
No. Not like I this halacha. No. So take a look in picture. No, further than that. In picture Reish Chaf Aleph. So the branch comes out, or picture Reish Chaf. You see how the branch extends outward, away from the trunk of the tree, and you can put it, and then the branch goes upward. You can put it either below or higher up. Okay, that's the case over here. So, Frekta Gemara. L'chayre, even if you put his Eirov higher up in the branch, higher than 10 tfachim, there's still a eitzah how this person could bring the Eirov to himself. Why are we saying that higher than 10 tfachim, it's out of his Dalar Amas, and it's higher than 10 tfachim, so it's in a Rishus HaYachid, and he can't bring it to himself. Frekta Gemara, but he still could. Why can't he bring this Eirov? He doesn't even have to bring down the Eirov. What's our problem? If it's higher than 10 tfachim, he can't bring the Eirov down from the Rishus HaYachid down to the ground, which is the Rishus HaRabim. He doesn't have to bring it down. Let him just transfer, let him climb up the tree. Again, Ben Hashmashis, you're allowed to go on a tree. Let him climb up the tree, take that food from the Eirov, and move it over there, above 10 tfachim, in the tree itself, to a spot that's going to be above the trunk of the tree, where the person's shvisa is. Rav has said, wherever you are, so that it becomes a space like a Rishus HaYachid, and everything above you is all in that space of a Rishus HaYachid. So as long as you get the food of the Eirov above you, it's good. You don't have to bring it down. So the whole basis of what we're saying here is that you have to bring it down. But you don't have to bring it down. That's the Gemara's question now. You can bring the Eirov on the top, above yourself. So the Gemara answers, no. Over here the case is that won't work either. Why not? Kesherabim Mechatfin olav. We're talking about that the branch of the tree that's below 10 tfachim is a kind of a branch that many people use to position their packages with it when they're walking in the Rishus HaRabim. This is something we learned about in the Gemara Shabbos. Sometimes in the Rishus HaRabim you have a pole or some kind of a protrusion from the ground that's tall enough for people to use to position their packages. Over here, the tree we're talking about is a tree that the branch is a specific height. Then we learned the height has to be 9 tfachim. It's a specific height that people use it to position their packages. If you have a package that's 9 tfachim, you have a omud, a pole that's 9 tfachim high, and people position their packages on it, and you throw and it lands in it, that's part of the Rishus HaRabim. So what's the problem here? What's the Gemara answering? So Rashi explains, the Gemara is answering, you put your Eirov in a place above 10 tfachim. That place is a Rishus HaYachid. Now when you want to move it over, you're going to be moving it over on top of this branch, which is a Rishus HaRabim. And then you're moving it till you arrive to another Rishus HaYachid above where you are. So you're going from Rishus HaYachid to a Rishus HaYachid through a Rishus HaRabim. Is that a problem? So Rashi says, if you remember what we learned in the Gemara Shabbos, so there's a halacha called Moishit. if you hand over something from one Rishus HaYachid to another Rishus HaYachid with the Rishus HaRabim in between, even if it went over the Rishus HaRabim above 10 Tvachim, it's not allowed. Why not? We learn it out from the Mishkan when they handed over the Kroshim from one Agola to another Agola, so it went from Rishus HaYachid to a Rishus HaYachid with the Rishus HaRabim in between, it's not allowed. And that's going to be the problem over here, where if the person is going to try to transfer his Eruv from the Rishus HaYachid that it's in to the Rishus HaYachid that he's in, with a space of a Rishus HaRabim in between. It's Rashi's pshat. But it's not so pashut. Tosfos disagrees, and Tosfos says a very interesting thing, that the issue would be Maver Dal Damas B'Rishus HaRabim. And here this is a huge chiddush. Tosfos says, even though you're Akira, you're picking up your Chayfetz on Rishus HaYachid, you're putting it down also on the Rishus HaYachid, and the space in between that you're transferring it, Dalar Amas in the Rishus HaRabim, is in a Rishus HaRabim where it's above 10 Tvachim. Nevertheless, there's an issue, there's a Isser of Mavad Dal Damas Rishus HaRabim in this way. Even a Isser in Atayra. And the Tosfos brings from the Gemara and Shabbos, which we also learned, that when the Leviim carried the Kalim of the Mishkan, they carried the Kalim above 10 Tvachim. The Gemara there makes the Cheshbon that the Mizbeach, the Aron, that they carried on their shoulders, the Gemara goes through the cheshbon of the height of the Leviim, the height of the Kalim, and it was above 10 Tvachim. So even though over here you're transferring your Erev above 10 Tvachim, nevertheless it's 4 Amas in the Rishus HaRabim, and you'd be chayiv. So therefore, this eighth of transferring it above is not going to work. Okay, it comes out that when we learned a simple Mishnah about putting an Erev above 10 Tvachim or below 10 Tvachim in a tree, it's not simple at all. We're talking specifically about a tree where the branch is away from you 4 Tvachim. And the rest of the tree is a tree that's 9 Tvachim high and Rabbim Mechatfim Olav. Then you can make this distinction between above 10 Tvachim and below 10 Tvachim. Okay, now the Gemara comes back to something else that we learned before, which is a machlokes b'negeh to ben hashmashos. The Gemara said that Rebbe holds ben hashmashos you're allowed to do an ism d'Rabbanan. Rabbanan hold that even ben hashmashos you're not allowed to do an ism d'Rabbanan. So the Gemara now brings the source of this machlokes. My Rebbe and my Rabbanan. Where is this machlekes of Rebbe and Rabbanan regarding ben hashmashos? The Tanya, we learned in the Braisa as follows. So the Braisa starts the same as the Mishnah. Nasnei be'ilan l'mayla masara. You put your Erev in a tree higher than 10 Tvachim. Mayla masara Tvachim, ein Eruvi Erev. It's in a Rishus HaYachid and it's not an Erev. L'mata masara Tvachim, you put it below 10 Tvachim, Eruvi Erev. It is the good Erev. V'asa litloi. But on Shabbos, you're not allowed to take your Erev even from that place which is below 10 Tvachim. Why not? Because you're not allowed to use a tree. But if you put your Erev in a tree, in a place in the tree that's below 3 Tvachim, mutter litloi. So over there you're allowed to take it from the tree because it's not considered to be a branch of the tree. Anything in a tree that's below 3 Tvachim is like part of the ground itself, which obviously is not muktzah and you're allowed to use. Nasnai bekalkala. You placed your Erev inside a basket. V'toloi be'ilan, and you hung it on the tree. Afilim l'mayla masara Tvachim, even on a tree above 10 Tvachim, Eruva Erev. The Erev is a good Erev. Divrei Rebbe, this is Rebbe's opinion. Now it's not very clear what's the pshat in this. Why above 10 Tvachim in a basket should it be okay? It's still above 10 Tvachim, which is a Rishus HaYachid, and you can't bring it down. The Gemara will explain this in a moment. Then the Chachamim argue and they say, Kol Makaim Sha'asar Litloi, any place that you're putting your Erev, that on Shabbos you're not allowed to use it, you're not allowed to take it from the tree, ein Eruvi Erev, it's not going to be an Erev. So here you see the machlekes of Rebbe and the Chachamim. The Gemara now explains exactly regarding which case Chachamim said what they said. The Chachamim maimerim ahai. Chachamim that say that if you're not allowed to take it on Shabbos, it's not a good Erev, regarding which case were they saying this? Ilema as-seife, were they saying it regarding the case where you put the Erev not on the tree itself, but you put it in a basket that's hanging on the tree, and still the Chachamim are saying that it's also to take it on Shabbos? Leme kasavri rabbanon stadin asurin. Would that mean that the rabbanon are saying that not only are you not allowed to use a tree itself, but you're also not allowed to use something that's hanging on a tree? The side of a tree, it's leaning and hanging on the tree, that is also also to use? This is something we learned about in the Gemara Shabbos. The issa that Chachamim made not to use a tree, does that mean just the tree itself? Or does that mean even something that's hanging on the side of a tree? So over there, the Gemara asked this shaila, but l'chayre here, if you're going to say that Rabbanan goes on the Seife, it would mean that Chachamim hold that even using the side of the tree is also. So the Gemara says, no, it doesn't have to go on the Seife. Ela areisha. It goes on the Reisha. What did it say in the Reisha? You placed your food on the tree itself. you placed it on the tree itself below 10 tvachim, so you're not allowed to use it on Shabbos. It's asim d'Rabbanan because you're using a tree. And on that, the Chachamim said that because you're not allowed to take it on Shabbos, it's not a good Eruv. So what do you see over here? Here you see the machlekes of Rebbe and the Chachamim. The Isser to take something from a tree on Shabbos is an Isser d'Rabbanan. Rebbe says, although on Shabbos itself you won't be able to access your food, but as long as bein hashmoshes you will be able to, because it's only Isser d'Rabbanan, it's fine. The Rabbanan say, no, it's an Isser d'Rabbanan, and even bein hashmoshes, that Isser applies. And therefore you can't access your Eruv, even bein hashmoshes. So therefore you have no Eruv. So here we see this machlekes.
That's just on the side. So it's chelik from the tree.
No, there's the tree itself. There's the tree itself, and then you have like a nail that's banged into the tree, and then on that nail you hang it. Yeah, it's done. Correct.
It's secondary.
It's done because of the
rain in a couple of weeks.
Because of
the kalkala.
the kalkala, exactly. The kalkala which is hanging on the tree. Yeah. Okay. Now the Gemara comes back to the case that the Braisa here said that if you put your kalkala, you put the Eruv inside a basket, and it's higher than 10 tvachim, that it's a good Eruv. So what's the pshat? Why is it a good Eruv? The Gemara asks here. Hi, Yulon. So here you're going to have to use your imagination. I hope to have pictures of here for this. Epis pictures I have, yeah. Okay. So the Gemara, Hi, Yulon, Heichi Domi. What kind of a tree are we talking about over here? The lespe arba, if the tree, the place in the tree that you're putting it down, does not have a space of 4x4 tvachim, so then where you're putting your Eruv is not it's not a Rishus HaYachid, makim peturhu. In order for something to be a Rishus HaYachid, it has to have the space of 4 tvachim. If it doesn't, so even if it's 10 tvachim high, it's a makim petur. If it's a makim petur, there's no problem to carry it from the tree down to where the person is. Okay, so even if you didn't put it in a basket, what's it saying of it? You put it in a basket, so then it's going to be a good Eruv. But if the tree itself doesn't have a dalet al dalet, it's not a Rishus HaYachid b'chlal. So that even if it's higher than 10 tvachim, there should be no problem to use this space as an Eruv. The ispe arba, and if the tree that you're talking about here does have a space of 4x4 tvachim, kinasnai bekalkala may have it. How does it help the fact that he put his Eruv into a basket on top of the tree? If that space is 4x4 tvachim, so it's a Rishus HaYachid. Whether it's a basket, whether there's no basket, your Eruv is in a place that's a Rishus HaYachid. So how could you bring it down to where the person is to use for an Eruv? So the Gemara's shaila is, what's the mile of the basket here? So Ravina says we're going to have to say that the Reisha and the Seif is talking about two different cases. In the Reisha where it said that if you placed it in the tree above 10 tvachim, that it's not a good Eruv because it's a Rishus HaYachid. The Ispe Arba, there it's talking about a tree that the tree itself is 4x4 tvachim. Seife, the Lesbe Arba, the Seife is talking about a case where the tree itself is not, you're talking about a very thin tree. And the tree itself is not, it's like a pole, let's say, like a young tree, and the tree itself is not 4x4 tvachim. V'kalkole mashlimasei la'arba. You hang your basket on the tree in a way that your basket is going to be mashlim, that space of 4x4 tvachim. So before we get to the mashlimasei, first the point over here is that because the tree itself is not 4x4 tvachim, so therefore the place where you're placing your Eiruvin in the basket, where the basket itself is not 4x4 tvachim, so it's not an Rishus HaYachid, it's in a makim petur, and therefore you can use it for your Eruv below. But the Gemara says the kalkala is mashlim, the space to 4x4 tvachim. Why does it have to be mashlim, the space to 4x4 tvachim? So what the Gemara is going to explain right now is that wherever you place down your Eruv, it has to have a space of 4x4 tvachim. This is, the Gemara here brings the source for this in a moment from Rabbi Yehuda, that in order for the Eruv to have a makim choshev where it's on, it has to have a space of 4x4 tvachim. So
It's a shvisa.
I guess, yeah, in order that the shvisa should be in a makom chashuv, the food has to be in a 4x4 tvachim. So on one hand, we're trying to explain that it's a space that's not 4x4 tvachim, in order to explain that it's not a Rishus HaYachid. So you can carry it down from where it is to where you are. It's just a makom petur. You can bring it down. At the same time, though, it has to be a space which is 4x4 tvachim in order for it to be a chashuv, a space for where you're putting your Eruv. So now how is this basket mashlim the tree that it should be 4x4 tvachim? So the Gemara says as follows: Rebbe savala Rab Meir. Rebbe, which is the town over here that we're talking about in this brayse, holds like Rab Meir. V'savala Rab Yehuda, and he also holds like Rab Yehuda. Savalak Rab Meir, he holds like Rab Meir. What does Rab Meir say? The Omar Chaykikin Lahashlim. So okay, before we understand the application to our case, but first let's see what Rab Meir said. Rab Meir said Chaykikin Lahashlim. We had this a few times. You also had it in the Gemara here in Eiruvin before. Chaykikin Lahashlim is a halacha regarding mezuzah. If you have a mezuzah that has the height of 10 tvachim and the width of 4 tvachim, but it's like an arch, and therefore it doesn't have the full width on the top part. So Rab Meir that it says that if the wall itself is thick enough that if you would carve it out, it would have that width of 4 tvachim, we consider it as if it's carved out. So we're going to apply this concept of chaykik and lahashlim to our case as well. We'll see in a moment. Another thing, v'savala k'Rab Yehuda, and he also holds like Rab Yehuda, the Omar be'inon eidov al gabi makar ma'ba. You have to have an eidov that is on a space of 4 tvachim. V'leke, here you don't have an actual space of 4 tvachim because the tree itself is not 4 tvachim, and the kalkal is not 4 tvachim. They're just mashlim each other. Okay, so now how does this work? Take a look here in the picture. Picture Reish Chaf Gimel. So you see where he's putting his eidov on picture Reish Chav Gimel, where he's putting his eidov in the basket in picture Reish Chav Gimel. So the tree is not 4 by 4 tvachim. Okay, now he puts his basket there. So the problem is you're placing your eidov where? Inside the basket. You're not putting your eidov on top of the basket. You're putting your eidov inside the basket, right? The top of the tree, which has a landing space, is flush with the top of your basket, not with the inside of your basket. Where are you putting your food? Inside the basket. So you can't really combine the space of the tree together with the space of the basket. Okay, if you look over here, it says there's 3 tvachim of a difference in the space of the bottom of the basket and the top of the landing space which the tree has. So how are you going to combine the two? The answer is we're using Rab Meir's shitta. Rab Meir says chaykikin lahashlim, that we consider it as if that space of the tree is carved out, and the bottom of the basket, which is flush with the rest of the tree, in that area, it's as if one long space of 4 by 4 tvachim. If you're not going to say chaykikin lahashlim, so then the bottom of the basket and the landing space of the tree are not together. But your chaykik, you consider it as if it's carved out and as if you have one long space of 4 tvachim, which is the tree together with the basket. That's the chiddush of chaykik and lahashlim that we apply over here, in order to give you the space of 4 tvachim. But here's the point. The point still remains. The rest of the trunk of the tree below this is less than 4 by 4 tvachim. If the tree below it is less than 4 by 4 tvachim, even if on the top you have this space that is considered to be 4 by 4 tvachim, it's not enough to make it a Reshus HaYachid. In order for something to be a Reshus HaYachid, the whole entire space, the bottom and the top, has to be 4 by 4 tvachim. We learned B'Nigeya to a Reshus HaYachid. In order for something to be a Reshus HaYachid, it doesn't necessarily have to have walls around it of 10 tvachim high. If you have a platform that's 10 tvachim high and has 4 by 4 tvachim wide, that's a Reshus HaYachid. But how about if you don't have a platform? How about if you have an area that below it's very narrow, and then only at the top of the landing of the platform it has a board which is 4 by 4 tvachim wide, but the bottom part of the platform narrows out and it's not 4 by 4 tvachim wide. It's not necessarily a Reshus HaYachid. It's not a Reshus HaYachid. So over here, this tree that he's placing his eidov on, the trunk of the tree below is less than 4 by 4 tvachim. So it's not a Reshus HaYachid. The landing space on the top, you combine the basket together with the tree, and you chaykik and lahashlim that it should be flush, it should be together, and you have a space of 4 by 4 tvachim that you need for an eidov, but you don't have a Reshus HaYachid. So this is the case where the Braisa said that you can put your eidov there above 10 tvachim in a basket, and you can bring it down to use on Shabbos, and therefore it's a good eidov. Okay? Let's see the Gemara weiter. My Rabbi Yehuda. Where is the source that Rabbi Yehuda said this halacha that you have to have 4 tvachim of a landing space for an eidov? The Tanya we learned in the Braisa, Rabbi Yehuda said, no, it's kana b'Reshus HaRabim. A person sticks a pole into the Reshus HaRabim. And you place your eidov on top of this pole in the Reshus HaRabim. Gevoya Yud, if this pole is 10 tvachim high, or a Chava Dalit, and it's 4 tvachim wide, Eiruvin Eruv. It's a good Eruv. Vim Lav, if it's not 10 tvachim high, or it's not 4 tvachim wide, Ein Eiruvin Eruv, it's not a good Eruv. Okay, so now the first part of this Braisa is understood. It's 10 tvachim high, 4 tvachim wide, it's a good Eruv. Why is it a good Eruv? Even though that space above is a Rishus HaYachid, and you're on a Rishus HaRab. But if you remember what we learned before, Rav says, anytime I'm being shavis in a place right below my Eruv, even if it's very high up, it doesn't matter, because that area is considered to be as if it's enclosed with a mechitza around it. And it's Oyla Ad L'Rekiya. As long as the Eruv is directly above me, it's fine. That's why we explained before that the tree was talking about when the branch extends out, away from the person. But the question is, it says, V'im lav ein Eiruvin Eruv. If it's lower down, it won't be an Eruv. So the Gemara asks, why? Adarabba, hu ve'Eiruvin b'makim echad. If it's lower down on a pole that's below 10 tvachim, why shouldn't it be a good Eruv? Then the Eruv is actually in the Rishus HaRabim, together with where you are. What's the problem? So the Gemara explains, Elo, hachi ka'amar. This is what Rabbi Yehuda was saying here. Gevoya Sara, when it's 10 tvachim high, tzarech sheyehei b'roish arba. All he's trying to say is, the landing space where you place your food has to be 4 by 4 tvachim. This is the source where Rabbi Yehuda said this concept. Right? So therefore, when it said V'im lav ein Eiruvin Eruv, all he meant to say is that if it doesn't have that space of 4 by 4 tvachim, it's not a chashav space to be kind of shvisa for your Eruv. Now the Gemara is medayik. Ein gevoya sarem, ein tzarech sheyehei b'roish arba. But if it's not high 10 tvachim, then you don't need the Eruv to have a landing space of 4 by 4 tvachim. Why is that? Because below 10 tvachim, Rashi explains, it's as if it's on the ground. Anything within the space of 10 tvachim is as if it's on the ground itself, because it's in the Rishus HaRabim, and it's as if it's on the ground itself. The ground itself has 4 by 4 tvachim. Once it's within the Rishus HaRabim, it's as if it's on the ground itself. If it's above 10 tvachim, so it's not in the Rishus HaRabim, it has its own landing space, then it has to be 4 by 4 tvachim. Okay. Now, the Gemara comes back to something else. What did we say before when we spoke about the tree? When you put that basket on the tree above 10 tvachim, the Gemara was saying that you're talking about a tree, that the trunk of the tree is less than 4 by 4 tvachim. The basket on the top extended the space to make it 4 by 4 tvachim. And the Gemara said that it's not a Rishus HaYachid. Why? Because the tree on the bottom was not 4 by 4 tvachim, even though where it's landing at the top is 4 by 4 tvachim, but because the trunk of the tree below was not 4 by 4 tvachim, it's not going to be a Rishus HaYachid. So the Gemara, Kaman, the like Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda. What we said at this point is not like Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda. Why? The Tanya, Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda Aimer, noatz kone b'Rishus HaRabim. If you stick a pole into the Rishus HaRabim, v'iniach b'roishay traskel, and then you put on top of this pole, you put a basket. You stick a basket into this pole. V'zorak v'nochal gabav, and you throw something and it lands inside this basket. Chayiv, you're going to be chayiv. That space of the basket is considered to be a Rishus HaYachid. Even though the actual pole itself is not 4 by 4 tvachim wide. It's only the landing space on the top that's 4 by 4 tvachim wide. I don't need it to be 4 by 4 tvachim wide, the entire height of 10 tvachim. It has a landing space of 4 by 4 tvachim on the top. It's a Rishus HaYachid. And before we said, regarding a basket that you're placing on the tree, that because the trunk of the tree is not 4 by 4 tvachim wide, even though on the top it is 4 by 4 tvachim wide, it's not a Rishus HaYachid. So therefore it doesn't go according to Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda. So the Gemara says, no, not necessarily is it the same thing. Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda. We could say that what the Braisa before, Rabbi's opinion, would fit with Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda. Why? Hasam Hadran Mechitzta. Over there, by the case that Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda is talking about, you have a pole and you have a basket that you stick inside the pole. So if you remember, we learned in Shabbos a halacha that's called Gud Achis Mechitzta. What does Gud Achis Mechitzta mean? If I have a space of 4 by 4 tvachim on the top and it has the mechitzas, there are mechitzas of this basket. There are walls of this basket. Even though the walls of this basket don't extend all the way down to the floor, but I consider it as if it extends all the way down to the floor. So over there, it's very simple. I have a basket on the top. I don't have the full width of 4 by 4 tvachim all the way to the bottom, but Gud Achis is an imaginary wall as if it comes all the way straight down to the bottom. So that could work. That's what Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda says, that it's a Rishus HaYachid. Hacha, over here, loy hadran mechitzta. Over here, I can't use these imaginary walls of the basket for this. Why not? The basket is not placed on top of the trunk of the tree. It's not stuck into the middle of the tree that it could just come down. Over here, the basket is sort of positioned on the side of the tree. If you remember the picture, right? In the picture, you have the tree itself, and then you have the basket that's being mashlim, the space of 4 tfachim. So Rashi explains, what you're doing over here, you would have to do 2 things. Number one, you have the basket on the side, and then chaykikin lahashlim, in order to consider it to be like it's flush together with the tree, you have to consider it as if it's carved out to be one with the tree. And then besides that, after you say chaykikin lahashlim, then you're going to have to add another halacha, that it's as if the walls of the basket and the tree comes all the way down. So Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yehuda would hold, I can't say these 2 imaginary things together at the same time. If you have walls on top of a pole, then there's the din of good achis, the imaginary mechitzas, as if it comes straight down. But over here, when the basket is on the side, to say that I'm mashlim it together with the tree, and to say that it is if it comes down, that I don't say. And therefore over here, Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda would agree that it's not a Rishus HaYachid. You can't say good achis together with chaykikin lahashlim. No, and beruach achas is not going to be enough. Huh? Because the whole Indian is a special halacha l'Moshe Sinai, that it's an imaginary thing. To combine 2 imaginary things, of them, it wasn't said. The whole thing, the chatchila, is a chiddush. So when it's direct, hadran mechitz, that comes directly down where it is, that works. But to combine these 2 things, we don't go so far. Okay.